Couples don't have communication problems. They have childhood trauma problems. They have issues from the past that are unresolved and incomplete, and don't realize that part of their motivation to be in relationship in general is that they're bringing a need with them. Everyone brings a need from childhood into their adult relationships. They bring an unmet need into their adult relationship. And this is part of the reason that conflict is a growth opportunity.
Aside from my soul.
Welcome to the Inspired Evolution. And we have with us, graciously, Nick Solaczek here with us today. Nick, how are you there, brother?
I'm doing great, Amrit. It's good to see you. Great to be here.
Oh, man, it's so nice to tune in all the way from Australia to Canada. We are totally trans-international doing this today. For those tuning into Nick for the first time, let me quickly do the honors. He empowers people to thrive in their relationships as a relationship coach. But beyond that, it's also so that they can really live a life that they love, which for a lot of you, that'll sound familiar. It is the tagline of the Inspired Evolution in many ways as well. So one of the things in there is IMAGO therapy that he really has dialed into. There's a lot of ground we can cover, and I really have enjoyed watching some of the pieces where you do Q&As, Nick, because there's a lot of ground you cover, and it's almost like there's no space in relationship coaching that you're not really willing to go, which personally, I'm just going to put my cards on the table. I coach on a lot of things, but I try to steer away from relationship coaching, predominantly because I find coaching one person's life can be quite involved, and then coaching another person's life can be quite involved. But the way I see it these days is like the relationship is almost like a third entity, and it's so dynamic, and there's so much going on in there. It's like, well, it's hard enough coaching one person. In some ways, yeah, there's a person is complex enough, let alone the complex dynamic of another person. And then the dynamic of the two of them put together can be such a thing. Maybe you can speak to some of that. But the first question starts with, how did you become a relationship coach? How did you know that this is what you were going to do, bro?
Well, that's a great question. I think I struggled for many years with my purpose. When I was 21 years old, I thought maybe I'd be a dating coach, and I'd be one of these guys with a perfect haircut and a black dress shirt teaching men how to meet women. And, at the time I thought that maybe I had something to offer in that realm. And that never really manifested in its own way. Eventually, after years of trying different things, I came back around to working with people and wanting to coach and wanting to be a guide, wanting to be a mentor. So I decided to do that and quit my job and jumped into it full time. There's a bigger story there and many other details in terms of how it came to be, but you meet the right people at the right time. When you're ready, the teacher arrives. That happened for me in several different instances. I've had a supernatural aid come into my life often to guide me. And there's a couple of key players there. One of them is Mark Groves from Create the Love, who's been very supportive of me and been a great mentor. And he was one of these people that pushed me to step more into my purpose and to go after what I want and to get up every day and do something that I care about. And he's actually the first one that brought IMAGO Relationship Coaching to my attention. It's actually IMAGO Relationship Therapy, but I'm certified as an IMAGO Relationship Coach. So I might use those terms interchangeably.
Yep.
In terms of me personally, I think I grew up with a lot of questions as a teenager, looking at my parents' relationship, looking at pop culture, looking at relationships in my family system, and asking questions like, if people are so unhappy in marriage, why do they do it? If people don't know how to work on things, why do they stay together? Are having kids a good idea? Is it a good idea to get married? Sort of asking some questions like that. And over the years, I've gotten some answers, but it's really in the IMAGO Relationship Therapy training and this theory that the deeper understandings and insights have began to create shifts for me. Because I've been the person that has struggled. I have been the person that doesn't know how to work through stuff in my relationship. I have been the person that was unhappy with aspects of my life and projected that onto my partner. So, my thinking would have been, well, maybe it's them that needs to change. Maybe if I trade my partner out for someone else, then I will be happy. Right? But really, it was actually aspects of my life, my purpose, my relationship to self, my authentic expression in the world that was actually affecting my experience of my life, but it's so easy to put that onto the person that's closest to you and project that maybe they're the issue and they're the problem, instead of taking full responsibility for the fact that we create and co-create, our reality, and we just get back the things that we're focused on. So I don't want to go into too much of a tangent there, but there's certainly some personal experiences that I've had that have impacted me, that have drawn me into this work. And just to touch on something you said, Emery, which is that you support people with purpose and tapping into their passion and doing something they love, contributing to their society or their community in a certain way. I know lots of therapists and lots of amazing coaches like you who don't touch relationships, don't get into couples work, and have no interest in doing that. And that's okay, right? Because we've all got our own gifts. But I'm just this special kind of a quirky dude who wants to specifically work with couples and make a difference.
I can relate to that in some way. Like some of my clients, many of my clients come to me when they're at that career existential crisis point, and they're sitting there and we're having a discovery call and we're chatting and I'm smiling and they're like, dude, I'm complaining to you, and I'm smiling. And they're like, is everything okay? Like, are you actually listening to me? I'm like, oh no, sorry. I know you're going through a breakdown and you're about to break through, and I've seen this so many times and I'm really excited for you, but I know you're going through a world of pain. Sorry for the inappropriate face gestures. So sometimes we're just the right kind of kooky for the right kind of work that we're required to be here to do. There's a lot in there. Thank you so much for sharing that. One of the key things that has been brought to my awareness recently, one of the things that I'm certified in is this thing called the Gene Keys. I'm not sure if you've heard of them, but it's an awesome little model, a bit like human design, and it helps you in some ways find your purpose in life. But it's based loosely on astrology, but also has a bit of a journey through your relationships as well. And you have these different codes, like Gene Key codes, for each of the different spheres of your life. I'm trying to keep it succinct here. And in fact, the starting place for our relationships in the Gene Keys, profoundly enough, is actually purpose, which I found really interesting, because you go on your life's path journey and the last thing you come home to is your purpose. But when you start your relationship in the Gene Keys, you actually start with your purpose. And I think it was a beautiful sort of contemplation for me to just reflect upon just the wisdom in that, and just how much our relationships really are here to teach us. When you look at life as an opportunity for us to learn, to grow, that really, your relationships are an amazing mirror for us to really, reflect back. Because I see like the standard mirror, like the shiny ones that we all see in the morning in the bathroom, whatever, reflecting our physical back to us. But it's almost like I look at relationships now as, mirroring your soul, mirroring your emotions back at you, and there's a lot if you're willing to look at it, to uncover there. So the key question, you asked some really amazing questions in there as well, and I wanted to go into some of those, but I guess the place to start is, maybe can you introduce us to IMAGO and give us a little bit of insight of what is IMAGO coaching, IMAGO therapy, and yourself as IMAGO coach? Yeah.
Well, it touches actually a little bit on purpose. So because the IMAGO theory is so deep and rich, we won't be able to touch every single aspect of it, but I'm going to do my best here to give people a starting point. And the first thing I can touch on is that IMAGO is actually Latin for image. And what that image is in this context of relationship is a silhouette, an image of your primary caretakers, their strengths and weaknesses, their positive and negative traits as you experience them as a child. And this IMAGO template, this silhouette, this image has a really big impact on our relationships, how we show up, has a big impact on the partners that we attract, because everyone has a tendency to be attracted to people that match this image. So if you grow up with an image that isn't so pretty, you grew up with an image that has some negative or abusive or toxic dynamics going on, a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, or caretakers who are emotionally distant or emotionally immature. Whatever is in that image, you will be drawn towards it. You are drawn towards the familiar energy signature from your family system. That's why I say for better or worse. Now, once you realize that this is happening as a growth opportunity for a few different reasons, it starts to become something that's more empowering rather than disempowering. And a lot of people come to my office saying, Nick, why am I attracting the same partners? It's almost an Instagram meme now of the woman who comes in and complains about the avoidant man, right? And this is something we see a lot of coaches talking about, the anxious partner attracting the avoidant one. And there's other dynamics involved here, but The point is that the IMAGO philosophy points us towards the fact that conflict is a growth opportunity. We attract a partner who maybe disturbs us in a certain way or creates anxiety for us in a certain way as an opportunity for us to grow and heal. And it doesn't occur that way on its face because we're anxious, we're stressed out. There's something about our partner that bothers us. We object to their difference in a way. It's like if they're different than us, they have a different perspective, a different way of handling money, their health, family, they have different ideas about sex. It can create anxiety for us. And what do we do when we feel anxious? We often use negativity to not feel the way that we're feeling. So we might try to get our partner to not be the way that they are, try to get them to be different so we don't have to feel anxious. And that sets us up. It creates a lot of trouble because people feel misheard, unseen, invalidated. There's a lot of hurt that's created in that kind of dynamic.
Do we need a disclaimer at this juncture because I'm sure that at the moment we're espousing, or, we run the risk of espousing the fact that whatever relationship you're in is the one that you're meant to be working on because it's revealing something to you. And surely I agree with you as well. But there are surely some relationships where it's not the most functional to be in them.
Well, for sure. There are relationships, people might be listening to this, and there's a relationship that they're in that maybe they shouldn't be in. I'm not here to tell people that they have to make the relationship work. These growth opportunities, sometimes the growth opportunity is to stand up for yourself and leave the relationship. Sometimes the growth opportunity is to say, I deserve better than this. For the most part, people are in situations where it's not at the extremes. Right? It's not, so that's an important
that's
point.
about 90% of, I just wanted to sort of tuck that disclaimer in there. So one of the key things in there with the IMAGO, which I think is one of the questions I was really excited to ask you today, the image that we carry of our, let's just say parents and, you said primary caregivers, but your parents that you're carrying around, the template that you have, do you find, as you said, we sort of end up attracting the same sort of image into our life again? Is it always towards, or do some people act out completely in repulsion to that? Is it, do you always do exactly what the image presents, or is there cases where you do exactly the opposite? I'll give you an easy example. I grew up and I got whacked a lot, man. I got whacked a lot. And I'll probably say I deserved maybe
you mean
70%
spanked?
of it. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. But whacked, not spanked, whacked. It's way more intense.
Okay.
But anyway, and I find we've grown up with parenting. We've got this attitude now. It's like, we're going to try our best, touch wood, to not, because that happened to both me and my wife. And we're like, you know what, we're not going to do that to our kids. And I think it's a generational shift that's happening as well. People are just not doing that. And I'm now seeing us act in, I don't want to say repulsion, but act in the opposite to what we were raised as in our parenting style. Now, is that something that you see often, or is it even when you're trying to, I wonder what Margo has to sort of say about, even when you're trying to avoid something, you're actually attracting it in? Because I've noticed that in other areas of my life as well. It's like you're trying to actually run away from something, and then it's like, I don't want to do that, I don't want to do that, I don't want to do that, and you end up just doing it in a very different, weird, twisted way anyway. Do you get the nature of my question?
I do get the nature of your question, and I think there's a really important point here about opposites. So while opposites attract, and there is a lot of paradox inside a romantic relationship, something you're pointing to, Emreet, is actually about evolution. So it's actually about evolution instead of doing the exact opposite. So when we say, you know what, we're not going to do that, this is not helpful, there's no scientific evidence that proves hitting a child makes them smarter. We are going to evolve beyond that dynamic. We're going to do something a new way. It's not really, I don't see it as opposite. With respect to attraction, though, if we see something in our family system we don't like, I get what you mean, that we might be compelled to run the other way or to choose something different. What tends to happen is actually, for example, the avoidant type of person, they grow up with a parent who's controlling, smothering, dominating. So they actually can have a tendency to run away from a relationship, and they might become the opposite of their caretaker in terms of their development. So just to put it this way, there's two terms in IMAGO, minimizing and maximizing. The maximizer character, their character is this kind of person who draws attention towards issues. They exaggerate their emotions. They want to take responsibility for the relationship. They might get loud. They might, get offensive in certain ways. They might use passive aggressiveness or manipulation to try to control the situation, to ease their anxiety. That kind of parent, that maximizer, they make minimizing children. And they make minimizing children through the development over time because the child feels controlled, smothered, dominated, and the child needs to adapt to keep certain parts of themselves alive. We all have biological imperatives. So this shapes family systems. This shapes generations. Obviously, because maximizer makes a minimizer, minimizer makes a maximizer. Now, it doesn't always play out that way. Some of us want to evolve out of these patterns, and we want to say, no, I'm done with that. I'm doing things a different way, and it doesn't mean doing the opposite. It means actually coming more into a centered, grounded, secure place, and that might be more present, more emotionally available. It might mean taking more responsibility for my reality, or self-soothing, or self-regulating. So, there's a couple key nuances here. And in some cases, people do choose the opposite of their parents in some way. But the way that they do that is typically visually. So, for example, if you have parents who are really tall and you have a negative experience of them, maybe you go, I'm going to get someone short, petite, or I'm going to get someone who's just not like that because I don't want. But what you're drawn to often is you can go to a physical opposite. But then you notice parts of their character actually that are very similar. You notice parts of who they are that mirrors or resonates or represents part of your past.
Thank you so much for articulating that, bro. That minimize and maximize is very, very interesting. I remember there were certain parts of my parents' relationship that I didn't necessarily want to model. And yeah, like sometimes when they would argue like a lot. Yeah. And I think that's, people that have been married for like 40 plus years that, you have arguments. And so, but like, I remember just going, when I find someone, I want someone that I don't want to, that we're not going to argue, like literally the minimizer, out of that. And then I remember when I met my now wife, I tried to I was super avoidant and just was like running away from every argument. So no, it's an argument. No, I don't argue. Like, you win, or like I'm right and I'm not having this chat. And it took her like a serious amount of patience for like 3-4 years to go, hey, like, it's okay to healthy argue things and points out. Like you can have discussions, and it was actually very refreshing to come back, like you said, to a happy medium balance, right? To not be sort of repressing or like overly expressing, to find like a medium ground in that space.
One of the things that exists in culture is this idea that if you've been together for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, you bicker like an old couple, right? Everyone's heard that phrase, like, oh, you guys, you bicker. You guys bicker like you've been together 50 years. Yeah. And it's a commentary on what we expect and what we think long-term relationships are like. That we basically have this idea that, you've been together long enough, you just put up with each other's bullshit, and maybe you bicker about it or you argue, but things don't change. That's just the way that it is. And personally, I think that that's total bullshit. I think that the examples that we've got in society are not that great. I think that most of our parents never took a course on relationships, never read a book, never did an hour of couples therapy. And so we just don't have great role models to show us that, hey, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years down the line, if you value that and you want to be in a relationship, it can work and it can be successful. Not all relationships are meant to span our lifetime. Maybe they're meant to teach us something specific or help us grow in a certain way, teach us a key lesson. But we actually can be more attuned. We can be more respectful. We can learn how to listen. We can co-create something that's overwhelmingly positive instead of overwhelmingly negative. And I really want to just, put that in here for anybody that's listening, because it's so it happens so fast. These little cultural narratives and quotes and cliches that we've got about what a relationship is going to be like in the future. And it's one of the reasons that people don't want to get in them, because they fear being trapped. They fear being in something.
Insidious.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find it really interesting as well, because even in that space, like I hear what you're saying is we don't have the archetypes for us to sort of model and fall into that are supporting like our highest expression in relationships. Yeah, Yeah, there's another question that I was hoping to ask further down the line, but let's ask it here because we're talking a little bit about culture as well. Do you find culturally that how do I articulate this question? That relationships are under a lot more pressure than they've ever been before in today's day and age. And that could be from so many different angles. And let's start with a couple of really easy ones. First of all, cost of living. I don't know what it's like in Canada, but here in Australia, only a generation ago, one person could work from home. One person could work and one person would be at home. These days, it seems like both parenting parties need to be working as well as parenting. And that's a lot of, and I'm talking about a parenting dynamic here, and there's a lot of coordination, teamwork, external stresses from job pressures from both sides that goes into that, but then even just, touch wood, which is a blessing, aged care, healthcare. People are aging and living longer and longer and longer and longer and longer, which is an absolute blessing. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. But then you sometimes think about, it wasn't that long ago, people only made it to about 40 and they had one partner, and then you start looking at the life of okay, I'm living 80, 85 years. Culturally, you're in that relationship for twice as long, sometimes 3 times longer, that you would have been before. I appreciate your point about the archetypes and sort of, having something to model back into your life. But do you think relationships are under more pressure now than they've ever been before? Or is that just, I'm in it and you're in it and we just see it that way? Yeah.
Relationships are absolutely under more pressure than they ever have been. And maybe that's a perspective of our time. Maybe, that's something that everybody our age has always believed, that things are getting more complicated. Things were better 20, 30, 40 years ago. It was easier then. Those were simpler times. I do believe that there are a number of factors that complicate being in a romantic partnership in a world that maybe is unequal or out of alignment, or, the system is under pressure. Culturally, we're under pressure. So naturally, we are under pressure. Our relationships are as well. There's so many pieces there that you spoke about. One is the fact that, we're living longer and we've got these longer lifespans. Now, does that mean that our relationships aren't meant to last, or that, it puts a bigger expectation on us? Yeah, it does. I would argue whether we're together for 5 years or for 50, we are going to come up against stuff in our relationship. Intimacy is a trauma trigger. It's going to bring up our shit. And if we want to have a successful relationship for 5 years or for 50, the principles actually are the same. Relationships need a purpose. We need a purpose. We come into our relationships with a covert expectation, with a projection about what the purpose is going to be. And that is that you're going to meet all my needs. You are going to do everything that I want. You are going to love me the way that I want you to love me. And we sign up for this covertly, unexpectedly, when we get into partnership with someone else, and both people do it. And that in itself creates a lot of challenges. But for a relationship to go the distance, no matter the time frame, if it's going to be quality, you got to have a purpose. You have to have a vision. And the longer lifespans, the pressures in our economy, the unique things that are going on in today's world, no matter where you live, there's unique dynamics going on, really requires us to evolve. It requires us to learn new skill sets, new ways of being. And if you don't learn the key fundamentals of a romantic relationship, if you don't learn how to repair with your partner and you don't learn how to build a vision, you don't learn how to eliminate negativity, it's going to be very difficult for your relationship to feel good for a long period of time.
Two threads came out of there. Relationships requiring a purpose is a very, very, very profound nugget. And what we sign up for initially, like you said, is to almost fill each other's voids. And, over time, that I can already see can lead to a very interesting dynamic. But one of the key things in there is intimacy is a trauma trigger. Can you speak to that a little bit more? What do you mean by that?
Well, couples think that they have communication issues. Couples think that, we see things a different way. You deal with stuff this way. I deal with this way. I get anxious. You get avoidant. I get loud. You get quiet. And you hear it, oh, communication challenges. We've got communication problems. Couples don't have communication problems. They have childhood trauma problems. They have issues from the past that are unresolved and incomplete, and don't realize that part of their motivation to be in relationship in general is that they're bringing a need with them. Everyone brings a need from childhood into their adult relationships. They bring an unmet need into their adult relationship. And this is part of the reason that conflict is a growth opportunity. Our communication styles clash, as we like to say. But where do those communication styles come from? They developed in our family system. They didn't develop in a moment. They developed over years, over time. And when we wake up in the morning and we say, this is who I am, this is just the way that it is, you actually been programmed. You have evolved in an environment that required you to adapt to what was going on. And that becomes who you are. It becomes how you see yourself. And you pair up with another person, and those things clash. So that's why I say it's childhood trauma clashing. It's the pain of the past that's clashing. The anxious person and the avoidant person, they both have fears. They both have anxieties. They both have things that they're afraid that could manifest in their relationship. And they adapt to that fear to try to make sure it doesn't come true. So the person who's afraid of being abandoned, neglected, or having their partner leave them for someone else, they can get clingy, they can get needy, they can chase their partner's energy, or they can even get manipulative to try to get them to hang around. Right? The person who is, afraid of being smothered or dominated or controlled in the relationship, the person who, fears not being able to be themselves, they tend to isolate and withdraw. They tend to withhold their feelings. They tend to detach and maybe get a little bit of distance from their partner, whether it's physically or emotionally. And they're trying to have something survive as well, which is actually the relationship. Because if I need to be safe, I need to get safety for myself, and it's safer at a distance. If I bring myself authentically to the situation, I worry that maybe part of my fears might manifest. So this is the reason why I say it's our childhood stuff that's clashing. And that's when we come back full circle to this idea in IMAGO that conflict is a growth opportunity. The struggle in relationship is a push towards reclaiming parts of ourselves that we lost somewhere along the way. Parts of ourselves that were underdeveloped or undernurtured, or not welcome in the household.
So how do we go about addressing conflicts in our relationship then? I'm sure communication's probably a key tool in there, but even deeper than that, how do you set up a frame? How do we actually go into having the conversations that we need to have? Can you provide some practical insight for us on how to navigate that for myself and the audience tuning in?
Yeah, there's a couple of key tools. One of the core concepts that anyone who's in a relationship needs to understand, at the core of the issue is actually a loss of empathy. And in this case, being able to sense what another person is feeling, being able to sense what another person is experiencing, and actually embodying the presence and curiosity, the interest to even, do that, to empathize with another person. And the loss of empathy occurs in an interesting way. So let me give you an example that kind of conveys this for most people. If you go on a tropical vacation, or you live in a sunny climate like you do, and you're at the beach going for a walk, and it's a fantastic day. Maybe you're listening to your favorite podcast, Inspired Evolution, and the weather's perfect, and you're taking some steps through the sand, and you step on a piece of glass or a sharp shell, and in that moment, all of your attention's gone to your foot. You're having the experience of pain. You're thinking, oh my gosh, am I okay? Am I cut? Am I bleeding? Are there more jagged objects I need to be careful to protect myself or people that I'm with? And in that moment, we get defensive and we get focused on ourselves, and we become self-absorbed, which means we are not thinking about anyone else or anything else. We are right there inside of that moment with our pain. And this happens emotionally. This happens emotionally in our relationship. We experience pain or hurt in some way, it's not always jagged and sharp. Sometimes it's numb, subtle. We experience pain, stress. We become defensive because we want to protect ourselves from a particular outcome, and we become self-absorbed, right? So focused on ourselves, not the other. And when that happens, and it happens so fast, we lose empathy. We lose the ability to be with the other person, to be with our partner, to sense what they're feeling, experience what they're experiencing. And that's at the core of a lot of the challenges that couples experience. And so to cut through that, we need to restore empathy. We need to restore connection. And one of the key ways that I teach this is through the IMAGO dialogue. And that's really a structure with two roles. And it's kind of revolutionary. One person talks, one person listens. And if we did more of that, we really would be more attuned, more connected. We'd spend more time in connection. We'd feel more understanding about where our partner's at. When I teach this, couples could sometimes feel like it's a little slow or it's a little uncomfortable. People say to me, Nick, we're really emotionally intelligent. We get it. We know the basics. I mean, we've taken communication trainings and, we're looking for the advanced stuff. And what people are missing is actually this is the advanced stuff. And if you're having trouble in your relationship, it's because you don't know how to dialogue. If you're listening to this and you want to be in conscious relationship, you want to be in connected adult love, you need to learn how to dialogue. You need to learn how to have a safe conversation with your partner in a way that increases the listening, increases the empathy, increases the connection between the two of you. So you don't have repetitive arguments, fighting about the same thing. Or most couples now, they actually don't fight. A lot of the couples that come to my office are really emotionally intelligent, and they know, okay, we know we can't fight. We know we shouldn't yell at each other. We know, not to hit each other or call each other names. We get it. But there's more subtle nuances going on, and there's sensation in the body and other triggers and reactivity that are still driving the conflict and the stress and anxiety. And it all boils down to the same thing. We need to talk about it. We need to talk about the things that we're afraid of, because if we don't, they go unexamined, unresolved, and they just kind of lurk in the background, waiting to, come out in some moment.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think dialoguing our fears, I can really hear the echoing sentiment being safety, providing safety for each other in the relationship and allowing, our vulnerabilities to surface, which, when we can see those, we definitely feel a sense of safety. Can we go deeper potentially into the mechanics of what a constructive dialogue looks like? Like you said, listen and talk, but I'm conscious that those that are tuning in potentially would just feel like, oh yeah, we do it, we talk, and I've followed your work for a little bit, and, finding that in there is like, actually there's a proper sort of, hey, like, can you just describe the mechanics of the IMAGO dialogue a little bit deeper, please?
So there's three core things that happen in the dialogue, which is mirroring, validating, and empathizing. And mirroring is a really powerful process and skill, because what it does is it takes something that somebody says and it gives the two people in this conversation a chance to make sure they're getting each other. So if one partner says to the other, I'm upset that you didn't do the dishes today, the partner doesn't say, well, you know what? I did the dishes for the last 2 weeks in a row. So you know what? I don't want to hear a complaint about it. That's not mirroring. That's defensiveness. That's dismissiveness. That's invalidation. So when a partner has a complaint, they have a worry, they have a concern, they have something important that they want to talk about, the dialogue teaches mirroring, which is that one partner talks and the other person reflects back what they heard. And they say, okay, if I heard you correctly, this is what I got. And then the other partner confirms that. And then the partner might ask, is there more about that? They might demonstrate curiosity. They might say, tell me more. And this opens up an opportunity for the other partner to share. But the point is that every step of the way through the conversation, there is a sense of being gotten and a checking that you're getting each other. And I'll just pause here for a moment just to say that being gotten and having experience of feeling gotten is at the fundamental level of developing secure attachment. It's one of the main things that helps people develop secure attachment. So if you resonate as being avoidant, anxious, disorganized, you feel like you have insecurities or an insecure attachment style, this practice, this tool, which I teach in my new course, can really help create secure attachment and slow things right down and basically help you learn the safe conversation format so that, and this is for me and my partner now, we practice this so much, we don't always need to pull out a worksheet or go exactly to the format because we are embodying the things that structure teaches. So we're bringing the focus, we're bringing the presence, we're bringing the curiosity. And that makes a big difference. And this is huge because so many conversations that couples can have with each other are unequal. And what I mean by that is we have a tendency sometimes to launch into monologue, to tell our partner about our worldview for 20 or 30 or 40 minutes and let them know how we're right and how we, how much sense we make and how much they need to understand that. And when we do that, we arouse our partner. We arouse our partner's anxiety. We arouse them in a way that nobody wants to be aroused. And we create a hierarchy in our relationship by essentially talking at and talking down to our partner. And this is unhelpful and it doesn't work. So the dialogue takes that out entirely. It removes the possibility to criticize. It removes the possibility for one partner to invalidate the other. And it essentially, creates connection. So we get this mirroring.
I just want to jump in there. One of the mantras that's been present for me, and maybe you can reflect on that. I know we're up to mirroring and there's 2 more to go. We're just interjecting in there for a polite moment. This little mantra that's dropped in for me, which is, I can choose to be right or I can choose to be love. It's been like really profound for the last good few months. It's like, you can choose to be right and push your point, or you can choose to be love and empathize and see that truth has many aspects to it, and so it's sorry, I just wanted to pepper that in there because it sounded very in line with what you were sharing.
It's very in line. You make sense and your partner's way makes sense too. This is the really key thing to get. But we object to difference. As I said earlier, we object to difference. Our brain codes difference as danger. It causes anxiety for us, and we don't want to feel anxious. So, we often want to try to get our partner to change. And the dialogue process helps this along because one thing that it does is it validates, it encourages and promotes validation between partners. And one of the key prompts there is I'll ask one partner to say to the other, you make sense because. So I'll say, hey, Joe, tell your partner why they make sense. Just use every cell in your body to try to make sense of what they're saying to you, even though they had a complaint, even though they feel hurt, even though you might feel like you did something wrong. Try to, stretch here and try to validate your partner and let them know they're not crazy. They make sense, even though you don't fully agree, even though you don't see things fully the way that they see it. Demonstrate that you understand, that they make sense to you. And we all want to make sense. We want our partner to understand why we are the way that we are. And it's difficult to do sometimes if we don't understand that ourselves, if we've lived our lives relatively unexamined or aren't clear about how our childhood is still rearing its head in our adult relationships or impacting us in a certain way. But when couples get this, there's a sense of actually feeling dropped in. There's a kind of like a heartwarming experience that couples have. And there's an ease and a relaxation, which is actually part of secure attachment. That's part of connection, is that we can be with each other's differences. We can sit with our uncomfortable feelings and hold space for one another. These are all the things that, most couples that come into my office are working on. And I'll just wrap this up just by saying that, the empathizing piece is sensing what your partner is feeling, sensing what's going on in their body, sensing what this is like for them, and also sensing what it was like for them as a child. So when we get that part of the pattern today is connected to the past, we get information that we were missing. And it starts to fill in the gaps a little bit. And that's part of the sense making that couples need to make of each other. So what I just described are 3 of the characteristics, 3 of the main reasons why dialogue works, which is mirroring, validating, empathizing. There are a number
all of them are in there. Yeah, perfect. Cool. Yeah.
So there are a number of tools and techniques for sure. But that's the main tool is IMAGO dialogue. And that's really the thing that helps people cut through the power struggle experience that they have, which is really this kind of battle over our differences, because we enter the honeymoon phase, everything's great, we notice the similarities between us, and inevitably we start to encounter our partner's differences. The things that maybe were cute before start to annoy us a little bit, and we can get focused on that and fixated on that. So when we have a conscious conversation, when we dialogue about these things, we take ownership of what's happening for us, what's coming up for us, and our partner is listening and getting it and being patient and being there. It doesn't always resolve the issues that couples have. It doesn't always immediately fix some of the frustrations, but it creates a foundation to connect and have conversations about anything. So the couples can move on and use their energy in more productive, empowering ways to make their dreams come true and build an ideal relationship vision.
Nick, can I ask you a bit of a personal question? Is there a lot of pressure on you in your own personal relationship, being a relationship coach, to try and, have the idyllic relationship? Like, do you feel that pressure from time to time, like with coaching?
Well, when I have challenges in my relationship, I sometimes experience it as double shame. So this is what happens for normal couples without clinical training, which is that they have shame about the experiences, the struggles, the problems that they're going through. And they say things like, why isn't this working for us? Why do we always fight about the same things? If we were meant to be together, this relationship would be easier. If we were really, truly meant to be, we wouldn't have these issues. And that's shame. That's shame about our experience. We feel unworthy, and all couples experience that. Shame about the struggle. So for me, with my clinical training, I think, I ought to know better. I ought to not struggle. I ought to not suffer in my relationship, and I should have everything worked out. That's part of my own sort of desire, just to not suffer. I'd like to believe that, we don't need to suffer. Just live a great life. But actually, suffering is part of life. Suffering is part of it. And I think that, to an extent, I don't believe that we need to walk around being victims. And maybe there are things that happen to us in life that are just not great. And there's no real amazing way to reframe it. Maybe some things are happening for our growth and evolution, and some things just happen. There's just some nasty stuff in life on this planet that in some ways is dominated by negativity. That it's difficult to handle. But, for me, it's a double shame experience, and that requires compassion. So I have to do the work that everyone else is doing. I have to have compassion for myself that, hey, I don't know everything. I'm not perfect. I'm not a perfect person. Sometimes I might say the wrong thing, or I might not be focused or present. I might be thinking about lunch or thinking about an important meeting I've got. And my partner might be talking about something important, and I look down at my phone. These are things that are going to happen. So, there is pressure a little bit, but the pressure that I experience, I kind of take ownership for that it'd be something I put on myself. So I try not to do that by just being honest about who I am and being real about my experience of life and relationship. Like, just because I teach this stuff doesn't mean that I don't have moments where me and my partner mishear each other or misinterpret each other or misunderstand each other. That happens. But my relationship works, and I love it because we're able to repair those moments easily. We're able to come back to connection. And that's something that all couples need to understand as well, which is that relationships are cycles of connection, disconnection, and repair. And we really don't feel good. And we start thinking about leaving our relationship when we've spent way too much time inside of that disconnected state.
I think that's really useful to know that you're going through that it is a bit of a cycle, connection, disconnection, repair, and that you'll continuously come, it's a cycle.
And Emery, one thing I'll just say here about, my personal life or my challenges, I recognize and I'm aware that there are ebbs and flows and there are cycles. And so while me and my partner are in a really, really good place right now, we feel like we're kind of back in a honeymoon. I also know that there's something that's going to come up. There's going to be a power struggle again at some point, as we continue to grow and evolve and we expand our life. Maybe we add a dog or a kid to the picture. Maybe we, add a home to the picture, and it creates something new for us to, bicker or argue or play out stuff about. Who knows? That's kind of the paradigm of IMAGO, is that there's always going to be growth opportunities that come up. And that's where, the term AFGO is used, another fucking growth opportunity. which is that, it's kind of.
Is that an IMAGO? Is that a trademark? IMAGO.
I do not believe it's trademarked, but it is a sort of a joke on the inside. And I give that to couples as well because it creates levity about this experience. To say, okay, here we go again. It's like DJ Khaled, another one, and we continue to have these experiences for our growth and development.
I love that, DJ Khaled. Another one. Actually, well, we've dropped in deep on your relationship dynamics. Thank you so much for going there and being so open and vulnerable. A question that's been present for me personally in my life recently is we've got an 18-month-old little baby at home, and he's no longer a baby, he's a toddler. He's totally running the whole world. But one of the things I've noticed is just through necessity and function, like our relationship still, touch wood, super solid, but there's also this utilitarian aspect of like raising a kid that's sort of come in. It's much more functional. I guess advice is probably what I'm shooting into, but any pointers on keeping, I guess, just the romance alive when you're now playing this other, like a whole new role has emerged in both of our lives, which is like, oh, I'm a father, oh, I'm a mother. And there's a whole level of responsibility that's quite utilitarian. It's how do I support you to be a mother? How do I support you to be a father? And we're doing that to quite a well degree, but it can be somewhat mechanical because the spare time and spaces that you used to have to be infatuated with each other, you're now infatuated with a baby and you're kind of spending that nurturing a child with responsibility. Any advice for people at that particular juncture?
One of the things, Emery, that stands out to me there is that when you take on more responsibility in life, what tends to happen is that you also can feel more stress. And when we feel more stressed, what tends to happen is we start to resort to our unconscious strategies that we developed as a child. So, for example, that minimizer or maximizer that we talked about, the minimizer is the constriction, the withholding, it's sort of like the turtle in the shell. And the maximizer is like the storm cloud. They might exaggerate or expand issues or draw attention to things. When we get stressed, we tend to go into one of our adaptations. We tend to maximize or minimize. And so this is what every parent and every person taking on a new project or new creative endeavor, I would argue maybe having a child is one of the more, challenging creative endeavors out there.
Universally creative.
Yeah. So one of the things that people need to be aware of is when they were going into these patterns, into one of these styles that are kind of at the extreme of communication, at the extremes of being. They're like opposite sides of a mountain. They're base camps that we retreat to keep ourselves safe. So parents need to become aware of when they're doing that, because they're going to do it with each other, certainly because of the stress of the situation. But whether you got one kid or 10, whether you've got a big corporation that you run, or you run you have 7 cats in your house, whatever situation you're in, the principles of safety and aliveness still apply. And there are really 2 things that couples need, and this is a big part of Harville's message in the IMAGO theory, which is that couples need 2 things for a thriving relationship, which is safety and aliveness. And if we've got those down and we're focused on those things, we can build resilience as we grow. We can build bigger capacity to deal with more, to deal with the extra logistics, the responsibility, the, different aspects of this. And I think what you were alluding to here a little bit, Emery, is that when you take on more stuff, you're focused on the logistics, making sure things happen here and there, and there's this juggling the responsibility of having a dependent, right, a child that is dependent on its parents, and it requires more from you. And so when we're pushed to our limit, or we are stressed a little bit, or our system is taxed a little bit, there are other things that can drop offline because we become focused on other key variables. So we can lose our orientation or our emphasis on developing safety or aliveness. Like, for example, if you got a lot going on and you want your child to survive, you want to make sure they're provided for, taken care of, all of those things are going to become very important. They're going to become higher on the list. Baby needs to eat. Baby needs to sleep. Baby needs to be changed. The doctor's appointments. Just all of these things become the main focus and priority, and sometimes to the detriment of our own passions, our own purpose, our own quality time, the connection with our partner. And I don't fully know the answer to this question because I'm not a parent yet. But I think the principles of safety and aliveness still apply. So just to, I don't know how much time we're going to have here in this conversation. I could talk for 30 minutes about safety and aliveness, but for all the people listening, for everybody listening, I have a free tool. It's completely free. It's a training. You can go onto my Instagram bio link, and there's actually a model that I developed in my clinical training called the Wheel of Relationship. I thought, Harville's saying these things are so important. Well, what are they? What is safety really? And how could I have more of that? How could I contribute more of that to my dynamic with my partner? So I'll just break down the 5 pillars quickly here, which are the ability to repair, which I mentioned, the ability to apologize and the ability to forgive, the ability to receive apology, and the understanding that, hey, we're not perfect people. We're not always going to get it right. And when we mess up, make a mistake, that we can, repair that and reconnect. We can take responsibility for what we wish we could have done better, or what we wish we would have done this. And, when I think about it, you really actually deserved this from me. And if I could turn back time, I would do it differently. Yeah. The others these are all equal. They're all of significant importance. Attunement is one of them. So attunement being, I get you, you get me, and we make a sincere effort to actually understand each other and be attuned to one another's reality. And that doesn't mean fully agreeing on everything, but it means deep understanding. Truthfulness is important. Telling the truth, being honest, telling the microscopic truth about who you are, which can be hard to do. Consistency and reliability, showing up in a way that your partner can count on you to a high degree. And integrity, being a person that's actions match their words, that they're a person who does what you say you're going to do, and that you don't commit to things that you can't follow through on. And as a parent, boy, it's a big deal, because it's not just the two of you anymore. It's you making it's you making agreements about the child as well. And there's an extra party involved. There's so many moments for some of these things to go a little sideways. And I imagine for most parents, there's a lot of stress around that, about, well, you said you were going to do this and I did it yesterday. And okay, well, what's the plan? How are we going to get this done? How are we going to work together? The key thing, Emery, for everyone listening who's a parent or, is wanting to build a better relationship with their partner, is really learning to turn towards the issues together as a team, and to truly feel a sense of collaboration, that we're together in this, and we're not going to turn at each other. We're going to turn towards our problems with a sense of resilience and curiosity. And maybe it's going to require us to get creative and, design something new that we hadn't thought of before.
I love that. I can feel the aliveness in that as well. So those pillars that you shared are both for safety and aliveness?
So there's 5 pillars of safety, and then there's 5 pillars of aliveness. So there's actually 10 total.
Yeah.
So you will love the first one, which is purpose. We all need a chief aim in life. We need something that we're up to. That includes us as individuals, and it includes the relationship. Passion. So this includes things like sex, blissful orgasms. But passion, in terms of the part of this reason we get out of bed in the morning, part of this thing that we're connected to that brings us joy. Maybe it's a hobby or another creative pursuit or an outlet. Positivity, willingness to reframe negative events, an ability to see things on the brighter side or the lighter side, and the ability to actually communicate positively with our partner as well, to express our appreciation. All right, passion, purpose, positivity. Playfulness is the next one. So, playfulness is a big part of secure attachment. And really, it's actually something that people really value in their partner, which could be a sense of humor, an ability to make jokes. But playfulness is also this kind of adaptability and flexibility and being able to roll with the punches a little bit. Being able to see inside of the cosmic joke, inside of the paradox of relationship, and have a sense of humor about it. The next one is presence, which is really this fountain of well-being in the here and now that we all want to 24/7 attain, but it's so elusive, and we lose our consciousness so many times a day. We're distracted, we're busy, and that's a big one as well. And so if you get these 5 down with the pillars of safety, you're really, really going to have a great experience of your relationship. The truth is, we've always got a pillar probably that needs some work, or there's loss of attention, or needs a little bit of maintenance. And that's what this tool that I've developed is about. There's a free version, and this is actually, I expanded it inside of my new course, Romantic Relationship Reset, to go a little bit deeper. And there's actually it's a 6-week program, so couples are going to get the fundamentals of eliminating negativity. I teach a whole week just on dialogue and building a relationship vision. So I'm really excited about that, and looking forward to hearing about people's results.
Yeah, I'm going to put a link to the course in the show notes below. And obviously your Instagram as well for people to go away and check out the free tool. I'll put a link to it in the show notes below. Nick, second to last. Well, let's see how we go. Potentially last little question or penultimate question. What does potentially you've mentioned relationships and purpose, which obviously Nick and Amrit show. Yeah. What does a healthy purpose for relationships, for your relationship, potentially look like? Because some part of, I guess, a lot of what we've talked about here today is your relationships are, AFCO. But, that may not necessarily be the key purpose to your relationship. Maybe growth is what the purpose of your relationship is, and maybe a lot like embracing conflict is all part of it. But I think especially those last 5 pillars you shared in aliveness gives a lot of light to focus on in terms of what you could craft your purpose for your relationship around. Can you just give us an example potentially of what healthy relationship purpose looks like?
Yeah, so on the fridge in my kitchen, my partner and I have a relationship vision, and that contains about 16 different bullet point items. And these are clear sentences that are written out in a positive we context. Okay. So for example, health and fitness. So one of our statements is, we strive to embody a healthy relationship with ourselves. We exercise, we work out together, we take care of our bodies, we eat well. Another statement, these aren't verbatim, just like from my memory. Another statement would be like, we want to create, or we have created, because it's actually as if it's already happened. So we have created a financially abundant lifestyle where we can pay for and purchase the things that we value and want to have. Around sex, it might be, we have a sex positive household where we, are curious about one another and embrace each other's fantasies and explore and have fun. Now, these are just examples. You can create anything that you want, and to each couple, different things are going to be important. Some people have kids, some people have pets, some people have businesses that they've co-created together. For some families, faith is really important, and religion is really important. So everyone's going to build this a little bit differently. But one of the key things that actually is important here, and as part of the process, and I teach this in my new course, is a vision is built off of 2 people's visions. So each person in the relationship needs to write out the relationship vision in the way that I described and spend a little bit of time on that. So there's more than like 5 or 10 points. You probably should have 20. And then those visions are exchanged. And you look at your partner's vision and you go down and you check off what's similar or what's the same, what you agree on. And maybe you put another question mark or bullet point on the ones that you're not clear about, or maybe you disagree. What inevitably becomes the relationship vision is what you agree on. And the points of disagreement, the points of difference, those need to be dialogued about, those need to be discussed. And just one example here that people get into is, they feel anxious about the difference, right? This thing we talked about earlier, we object to difference. We feel anxious that our partner's vision is different than ours. And look, there are some things that are clear deal breakers and non-negotiables. There are some people you meet that you're attracted to and even fall in love with that might not be a match for your future vision. And what to do about that? Well, there's certainly a few choices. With respect to this course and building a relationship that you love, you got to talk about it. And I'll just share one example quickly here, which is that my partner wants a golden retriever. She dreamed of a child, a young girl dreamed of having a golden retriever. And for me, it's a cute dog, but I'm not drawn to it. I want more of a bully breed. I want a Staffordshire Bull Terrier or, a pit bull or something. And she's not into that. She doesn't want that. And I said, okay, well, it's no big deal. We're not in a rush to get a dog. And I did my minimizing thing. And she said, well, no, we need to talk about this. We need, it makes me worried that we're never going to agree on an animal. So she's doing her maximizing thing. And, we got actually into a little moment of tension. And after a couple of minutes, I realized, oh, wow, I'm minimizing, you're maximizing. And we're just stuck on the difference here. So I said, okay, let's put this aside for a day. Let's come back to it. Let's talk more about it. And what this moment I'm describing is about, and what the core teaching here is from the relationship vision, is that couples need to be open to their difference being an opportunity for creating something new. Couples need to be open that their difference is actually potentially a gateway to something else that they hadn't even considered. And for me and my partner, that was different breeds that we didn't know existed. That was different dogs that we weren't aware of that we even liked. And we started watching some dog training videos on Disney Plus, encountering these different breeds and different aesthetics and different personalities, and thought, oh, this is an option. I never thought of that. And this happens with work, lifestyle, what city should we live in, how many kids should we have, how many cars should we get. Whatever the conversation is, there's usually a creative potential that could be even better than what you were focused on. And that's part of this creative experiment of designing the vision.
Sorry, I smile only because I love that example. I also always wanted a little English Staffy, and my wife wanted a sausage dog, and we ended up with a Japanese Spitz, which is a very happy medium between the two. So I totally get what you're talking about there. Man, Nick, it has been such a pleasure to have you here today. Like I said, the course sounds wonderfully robust, especially those 5 pillars on both sides, safety and aliveness. And, I think my own personal question that you answered for me there about, parenting, I think it's like focusing on the aliveness of things that are really alive. So that was really helpful for me as well, but obviously totally honoring how important safety really is in relationships as well. Brother, so much respect and love for the work that you do. And thank you so much for being here to share it with us today. However, I also know it's not just today's conversation. It's like a lifetimes of work that you've put into being able to share this so robustly with us here today. So just honoring and acknowledging you for all of that and being so vulnerable and open with us here today. Thank you so much, man.
Thanks, Emery. It's great to be here. I love the work you're doing and appreciate you having me on.
Oh, man, such a pleasure. And Inspired Evolution Tribe and audience, thank you guys so much, as always, for being part of this. It wouldn't be what it is without you, brothers and sisters. So much love from Nick and myself. Stay inspired. Keep evolving. Hey guys, if you enjoyed this video, give it a like, leave us a comment, and if you want to stay in tune for the new episodes launching every Monday, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay inspired to evolve.